now that you have this diagnosis of bipolar disorder and you have this medicine routine down, what does your life look like now and your hope for the future?
Basically, I know that there are steps that must be followed, and I mean must, without exception, be followed in order for the rest of my life to look sane or to look normal, as normal as the word normal can mean. It's been my experience that there's nothing outside of the routine that is acceptable to me. And that includes not only the medication. I go to the gym. I find I mean, Duke has done studies about exercise and depression, in fact, and found that
The big link.
it's a huge link. It's more important and effective than antidepressants in some cases. So, and then the other thing, which is huge, and I would encourage anyone who's dealing with any mental health issue, please have a therapist.
Sure.
I mean, you're going to have a psychiatrist for the medication, but outside of that, there needs to be therapy. There's so much to be learned about ourselves and the world and other people that you can't get on your own. You just can't.
And so it's important to be able to talk through some of that. I know we talked a little bit about some of the things that you were dealing with and the symptoms that you didn't know how to control. I mean, were there incidents where you went, before your diagnosis, where you went, what is going on? This isn't just depression.
Very much so.
Can you think of any examples?
Probably the most profound one is very general, but I'm not a sleeper. I'm not a sleeper. I've never been a sleeper, not even as a baby. And I would look at my watch or my clock and be so excited when it got to be 9 p.m. so I could go to bed. And I didn't want to get out. Highly unlike me. And this would go on for days and days and days and days. And then that was punctuated by what is called a hypomanic episode. Hypo is basically a mania less than the mania that you see on television and you've heard about. It means that you aren't necessarily engaging in risk-taking behavior, which is a hallmark of bipolar 1, but you have these days of just productivity and happiness and joy and gratitude, and it's like you just can't move fast enough. You can't do enough. I would clean my house in 2 days, and anybody who knows me could tell you I am a pig.
So like on one hand it sounds great, but it is a sign of this disorder, which is bipolar 2. So what was the incident that led you to the mental health facility?
The slide, as I call it, had occurred probably over a 2-year period. And this is where the medication merry-go-round started, and all the doctors had my best interests at heart. I don't fault anyone for not finding the magic beans, so to speak. But what happened was, over time, that sleeping didn't stop. And those hypomanic episodes, when I had them, got longer. And what pushed it over the edge was, I realized one day that it wasn't that I wanted to die, per se. It was that I didn't want to live. Very different things if you think about it. I just had no desire to participate in reality, in fun things and not fun things. I just wanted to be alone and, suffer in silence and just be done. And I called a girlfriend one night and I was sobbing, and I did it all the time. And she said, "We're going somewhere. That's it. We're going. God bless you, Christy."
And that was the catalyst.
That was it.
That got you into this facility that eventually got you to the treatment.
Yes.
That turned everything around.
Yes.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. From that standpoint, I've been very fortunate that all of my friends stuck by me, even through a lot of the turmoil that I caused and the attention that I needed. They stayed right where they are. I'm so grateful for that. And I'm just grateful in general from a sense of being able to look at the world with a healthy brain. Because looking at the world with an unhealthy brain is, I don't even have a word for it. It's horrible. It's just horrible. I mean, your brain is controlling everything in your body. So without that healthy brain, nothing is clicking on all cylinders.
Nothing makes sense.
No.
What do you, before we move on to the next topic, what do you want people to know about mental health? Because so many people are dealing with mental health issues and nobody knows. Like, you're not wearing a t-shirt when you walk down the street
Right.
saying, I've been diagnosed with this, be nice to me.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
what do you want people to know?
There are a couple things. First of all, I want people who are sick to ask for help. And you never know where that help might come from. You never know. So just raising a hand or lending a voice, you're basically in a position to get better. And there's no better position than that. And then the other thing I would mention is help out. Help out. It doesn't matter if someone has, as I said, ADHD, which is thought to be a high functioning mental condition. It doesn't matter if they have ADHD. It doesn't matter if they have schizophrenia. Help out. It's not hard. Offer somebody, some facilities, some resources. If you have a story, tell it. If you don't have a story, listen. It's really a thing that should be stamped out, is this stigma around mental illness, meaning that people are just quote unquote crazy. There's a lot more to us than that. We are getting by.
Yeah, and actually that word crazy shouldn't even be used when you're talking about serious mental health
Absolutely
issues,
not.
right?
It's a slur, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I would not take well to someone
Sure.
addressing me as crazy, even with the condition or because of the conditions that I have. I take great umbrage to that because I have worked hard
To get where
to
you
be
are.
where I am, to be standing up straight, to, walk down the street and say hi to people. It was hard.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I mean, I can hear it in your voice. I can see it in your face that you have, you've come full circle. And that's just so amazing because so many people suffer silently, right?
They do, and it's a shame.
So not only have you dealt with this, but you got this under control, and then you had a health crisis, a physical health crisis.
Yeah.
So talk as much as you're comfortable about with how that came about, and then, what transpired after that.
So the bipolar disorder basically came under control in about 2018. In 2020, October 29th, I had a mammogram. I received a call that I did indeed have breast cancer. I don't remember anything else. And there are a lot of things I'm regretful of, or not a lot of things, but the main thing I'm regretful of was that I kind of ostriched the whole thing. I didn't ask the doctors a lot of questions, which is not like me at all. I'm not afraid to ask a question. So I just could not stand having that conversation because it made it more and more real. And it also meant that I was going to go through something disturbing, to say the least. I was very fortunate in that I did not have radiation or chemo. And that was the thing that I kind of hung my hat on. Like, woohoo, we're just going to blow through this whole thing. I'm going to, get me a breast implant and it's going to all be gravy. And what I would come to know is that I could not recover from wounds. So the surgical wounds that I had.
From your mastectomy.
I'm so sorry. Yes, I left that out. Yeah, so first of all, I had a singular mastectomy, unilateral. Then I found out more about the genetic testing I'd had, which I had two cancer markers, neither of them BRCA, much less known. One of them also indicated GI cancers as well. And my previous doctor had left, and a new doctor came in, and she was kind of like, "Wow, what are we doing here? Why do we have two boobs? Like,
We need them
yes,
gone.
two of them are not to exist, both of them." So I decided at that point to have a surgery called a DIEP procedure, DIEP. And that is where they make an incision from hip bone to hip bone. They take that tissue, they make breasts, they stitch you back up, and everything is supposed to be absolutely wonderful, hunky dory.
So this is as opposed to putting in implants.
Yes, because I thought I had a wound, so hard to describe, but I'd had a wound with the first mastectomy, so I decided with the second mastectomy, I was going to do this DIEP procedure because I wouldn't have anything fake in my body and hopefully no more wounds. So to avoid the wound, which was terrible after the first mastectomy, I had this huge procedure done. I mean, this was a 9-hour surgery. Because there were micro veins where everything had to be kind of soldered back
Matched
together.
up, yeah.
Exactly. And I could not heal from that surgery. So,
And so when we're talking about wounds, for people that may not understand, obviously when you have surgery, they're cutting you open, they're doing things in terms of, sewing you back together,
right.
literally. And for whatever reason, your body was not healing from these surgeries.
No, it was not cooperative at all. I had one wound that was the size of an egg and the depth of a nickel, which had to be dressed. And dressed means not to be disgusting, but I literally had to put my fingers inside my body to pack this wound.
Because you live alone.
I live alone, yes. So I had to do these things myself until it reached the point where home health was called in. They were wonderful. I don't know what I would have done without them, because at this point I had several wounds, not just one, because almost all of the areas where those incisions were would not heal. And
the doctors couldn't figure this out.
The doctors could not figure it out. The two hallmarks of wounds are diabetes and smoking, and I was neither a smoker or diabetic. How do I even say the next part? It was a lot. There were 6 surgeries over 2 years. A couple of those were due to infections that I got from the wounds refusing to heal. I wore something called a wound vac, which adheres to the wound and pulls away infection and other things you don't want around that wound. That was really rotten because I had to wear it 24/7. I had to change these filters that were not fun at all. Sometimes it would lose suction, and I had a very limited amount of time to fix it before the vac had to come off, and I had to do the dressing changes again, which I did not want to do.
And I mean, it would be very dangerous.
Yes, I mean, I did get an infection that was absolutely terrible. It left me in the hospital for 5 days on IV antibiotics, and I wasn't far from sepsis, to be perfectly honest with you. So wounds are very different and one wound is not the same as the next wound.
And certainly nothing that you expected. I mean, we know, or at least we think we know, a little bit about chemotherapy, a little bit about radiation. All of us, most of us, have had people in our lives with cancer. Right. And so we've experienced it through them if we haven't had it ourselves.
Right.
So this was just something so out in left field for you to be dealing with. So eventually, I mean, I'm guessing eventually things got better.
They did, and part of the reason they got better, and this is just the craziest story ever, my sister is a pharmaceutical rep, or actually a medical device rep. She reps wound care products.
Wow, that's lucky.
And the products that she reps are not necessarily the kind of dressing you would find in an average hospital. They are costly.
They're high end.
They're high end, yes. So I had a level of treatment in that respect that other people don't get.
She gave you samples.
She did. I know I probably shouldn't be saying this.
Well, we're
Sorry,
not saying the
Tammy.
name of the company.
Yeah, we're not going to say the name of the company, but she was fantastic in making sure I had what I needed. So I
Maybe you
don't
could
even
do a
want to think.
PSA for them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, she's actually used me in some situations where she was trying to sell the product.
Well, why
I mean,
not?
I don't mean that in a she took advantage of me way,
But it works for you. It
exactly.
worked.
I was so happy if it could help one more person to have those dressings. I was absolutely 100% all for it.
Now, how you're dealing with a mental health issue, which you have under control, but now you have this really serious crisis, which sounds like it was super isolating, even though you have all these family and friends, because you're not going to go out in public. You've got all this going on. You don't feel well. You've got these dressings you have to deal with. When those two intersected, I mean, how did you stay sane in terms of your day to day, mental health?
One thing is a little weird, but the art of distraction I became a master of. Reading, watching television, writing, you name it. I just dove into it because I in many ways, because of the mental illness, could not.
You didn't want to focus on it,
No,
on the
no,
health
no, no.
problem.
I would, like I said, I ostriched through the whole thing instead of sitting there and doing research on what was wrong and how to fix it. I just couldn't even wrap my head around it, so I didn't. And the other way I coped is my friends. Again, the support system. You just, as the kids say, we roll deep. Like,
Yeah.
they're good people, and some of them have been with me since college, since high school. People I know from work, from previous employment, and it was an honor to me that they thought enough of me to show up.
I always talk about on this show having a tribe, of women especially,
Yes.
who are just there and people who knew you when,
Yes.
people who knew you growing up, high school, college, different jobs. It makes your life so rich. And I think the older we get, the more important that is. And this is a great example.
Yeah, and as a single woman, you face a different kind of challenge in having a community because, in frank terms, marriage can isolate. It can pull away from the single folks who are having a totally different experience. But that did not happen to me. A lot of my girlfriends are single, but that did not happen to me. The participants came from everywhere and came from every situation, and it was more than I could have asked for.
Because they love you. Because you've been a good friend to them.
I try.
I think you are. At this point in the show, I usually ask people kind of a boilerplate question about like, how do you change your life? How do you transform? Da da da. Da. But because we're talking about such a heavy or two really heavy topics today, I think the question that I'd like to hear from you is if there is another woman out there who's listening to this show, who's dealing with a health crisis, who's dealing with a mental health crisis, or maybe both. Mm-hmm. I mean, what advice would you give her? Because again, these things are really isolating sometimes, and it's hard to ask for help.
It really is. I think I would tell someone you're going to get there. And I think in life, we often have this focus on thriving. And you talk about it a lot on your podcast, and I love that you do. But there are situations in our lives where we just have to survive it. You just got to put one foot in front of the other. You got to pray for better days. You've got to lean on your support system. I think it's more not necessarily wrapping yourself in it, but throwing off the cloak and saying, here I am. There's flaws. I'm hurting. It's not okay. And then other people come in. And it's a blessing.
That's really great advice. And I think about different times in my life. I haven't experienced what you've experienced, but different times in my life when my mom was dying. And I remember that feeling of just, okay, just get up, just put one foot in front of the other, just make one decision at a time. And we have to be okay with that when times are really hard, right?
It's important. It's so important to know that you're not going to knock it out of the park every time. You're just not. You may not make it to first base. You may trip over your shoelaces. But the bottom line is, if you persevere, it'll be okay.
That's great advice. Okay, so you're feeling better now. You're feeling stronger.
Yeah.
You got a pep in your step.
Yep.
What's next? What do you have anything on your bucket list that you want to do?
Well, right now my bucket list is pretty simple. I am looking for a job.
Okay, hello. This is going to air like in November, so we'll see.
Yes. So I'm looking for employment right now, but I think my bucket list is even more simple than that. My parents are in their 80s. And we all experience changes. But I just want to be a good daughter to them right now. That's so important.
I hear you.
So sorry.
No, it's okay. I totally know. My dad's 84, and it's the same thing, You just want to be there for them. And my mom died at 71, and I didn't get that opportunity. So, but they're not far, right?
No, they're 45 minutes away when they're at home in Johnston County, and when they're playing around sometimes in Surf City, they're 2 hours away. So
you get to
I
see
get
them.
to spend time with them. Yeah, but that's very important to me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Tina, how can people follow you or see what you're doing? I know you have an online presence, right?
Oh gosh, I kind of do. I wouldn't say it's anything to write home about, but I do have an Instagram page. I think it's tina.tart1. I have a Facebook page, which is also tina.tart1. I have a LinkedIn page, which is the Tina Tart, not to be confused with any other
Right.
Tina
So
Tart.
so future employers, check out, and I will put these links in the show notes.
Wonderful, wonderful, and yeah, I'm just happy to be out here doing my thing, whatever thing that is, and we'll keep going.
Two things. First of all, you're anything but ordinary, so that is off the table. And you are exactly the kind of person that I want on my show because you're so honest and you're real and you're vulnerable and you're sharing a really important story. So thank you, friend.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for having me. It feels like we did something good today.
Yeah. Well, I think that we did, and it's an honor to talk to you.
Thank you, you too.